In this episode, we're going to talk about Al Pacino, shoots with Victoria Beckham.
You say Victoria Beckham?
I know, but that would be great if you could do that one. I'll do Al Pacino then.
Okay, I'll top you with Lucian Freud.
I'll hit you with Kevin Spacey.
You win. So can we start with Al Pacino?
We can.
Or am I actually meant to say something else? Like Hugo, talking to Cambridge, who is this fantastic photographer that you probably haven't heard of, but 8 prime ministers know his work very well. Most of the top musicians in the Northern Hemisphere, or just the world, love being photographed by you. And I haven't yet had that experience, but I'm looking forward to being photographed by you one day.
That's very kind of you, Hugo. And Hugo Bernand, the King's favourite photographer, who has photographed everyone and anyone, and I think is the first and only person to have photographed 4 royal weddings. Is that right?
Yeah, and I live in Notting Hill, where my studio is, so you could say 4 weddings and a coronation. I've met some amazing people as a result of being a photographer, and there are some people I have never had an opportunity to photograph, and Al Pacino is one of them. And I'd love to know, I genuinely would love to know how you got there, what he was like, and anything else you are allowed to tell us.
Well, that last bit is interesting, isn't it? Because there are a couple of things I never do. I never assign the rights to a photograph away, and I have been asked to. As in, who owns the rights to this shoot once it's done? If I'm asked to give away those rights, which occasionally I am, and increasingly in America, I refuse to do it. And I've lost shoots on that basis, Rod Stewart being one.
Really?
We were literally the day before the shoot, and I said, no, I am not giving Rod Stewart the rights to my work. It's not how the copyright law works, and I'm not interested in this, Mr. Manager or Mr. Agent. And I got a call shortly afterwards from my agent saying, that shoot will not be happening. But the other thing is the NDA situation, and I'm pretty sure I signed some sort of NDA on the Al Pacino thing. But let's move swiftly past that. So the Al Pacino one is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, I was delighted to get it. And how did it come about? Well, it came about through one of your patrons, actually, King Charles, because I am ambassador to the Prince's Trust, as was. And he wanted to do a book with me on people who are inspired by music. I think it was called Inspired by Music. And he, in that book, which was absolutely fabulous for me, he chose all the subjects. So he chose them. They called them up. I roll up. So I'm literally flying to LA. I'm hiring a convertible something or other way beyond what I would normally have spent, because I think I'm going to arrive at Al Pacino's house. It better look good. And I arrive there and I'm quite nervous, and I'm kind of telling everyone that I'm shooting Al Pacino because I've been a massive fan of his forever. And I knock on the door a little bit nervous with no assistance, weirdly, because I didn't want to fly one to America, and I thought I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to take one in America. Anyway, to my great surprise, Al Pacino himself answered the door, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Furthermore, and Al, forgive me for this because you are lovely and you looked terrific, but at the moment you opened the door, you weren't looking so hot, and you kind of looked. Your hair was all over the place, and you looked older than I was
expected. Even know it was him, or did you think it was his dad?
No, not for a moment. I thought it was my grandmother. Al, you love me, really. And so, we get over that quite quickly, and the hair and makeup people who I had booked, and all those people arrive, and they all do their business. And while Al is doing and he's so lovely and charming and unbelievably intelligent and sort of intellectual.
I want to ask a quick question. At this stage of the shoot, do you already know how and where you're going to photograph him?
No. So while he's doing all this stuff, I'm wandering around the house, wandering around the garden. It's not his main house at this point. He's rented a temporary house. And I look in the garden, I think it's a lovely day. I'm going to shoot it in this beautiful garden. There's a swimming pool at the end. And so I set up my temporary lights. Do you know those? This is a technical thing for those interested, but there are lights. Most studio type lighting needs to be plugged into power sources, but there is a relatively not that recent, last 10, 20 years, where you can just package it all and battery power. And so I set some of those up in the garden. Al's got himself ready. Now he looks like Al Pacino, for which I'm very grateful, because that's going to help me in my job, making him look great as Al Pacino. And I do a whole shoot of him in the garden. And if I say so myself, it was rubbish. I mean, no disrespect to him. I just hadn't somehow got it right, hadn't set the lights up properly, should have had an assistant.
Well,
didn't.
Without being technical for very long, if I was to mark you out of 10, I'd say big mistake not taking an assistant. And
Correct.
Mixing daylight and electrical flash is a nightmare.
No, yeah.
Yeah, so you were making a rod for your own back.
Okay, so I'm like 20, 30 minutes in, and I'm thinking, well, Al, you've done everything I've asked of you, but I really haven't met you here. But to his great credit, he was absolutely fascinated by then. He did a film, didn't he, about Shakespeare? Was it King Richard the Third, Second? I'm not sure. But he did it. He was really interested in, and he just wanted to talk, and he wanted to talk about other actors, and so I was able to do something which absolutely saved my bacon, which is I basically said, Al, why don't we move over to the swimming pool? Just using natural daylight. And he just sat down against this brick wall, and the sun, I could just see the shadow coming down the wall beautifully, right down, like in a vertical straight line. And I just said, Al, if you just move a foot to the right, and now you've got a really great looking shot of Al, the kind of cool guy, leather jacket, but with the shadow falling right down the middle of his face. And I love that sort of light and dark, good and evil.
That's the luck of photographers, isn't it?
So that's how that went. And honestly, we just stayed and chatted about... He could talk forever about theatre and actors and writing.
So have you come away loving him more than before the photo shoot?
I totally love him. And that doesn't always happen, because... I think sometimes photographing your heroes is a fool's game. But the thing that happened in that shoot, let me rephrase that, Hugo. Sometimes in shoots, you can shoot somebody and you feel you've absolutely captured what's in front of you, and they're happy with it, but their people, in inverted commas, their people are like, that's not how we envisaged Al on the front of Vanity Fair or wherever this is meant to go. And they want to start messing around with Photoshop and retouching, and if you're not careful, they can take 10, 20, 30 years of somebody. And this does happen increasingly in the UK. It certainly happens a lot in America. But it can happen to the point where you no longer feel it's your work. So
that's yes, and this was editorial work, wasn't it? Rather than, I mean, had you been doing it for advertising, you would have just said, I'll take the money and run. You can do whatever you like. But when you're actually trying to represent someone, especially if you care about them, it's important to you as the creator of the work.
Well, that's the point. And by the way, this is entirely hypothetical. This is if this had happened on that shoot, would I still feel I owned the creativity and was I the portrait artist involved? And I'm not sure I would.
I know you mentioned earlier on we're going to talk about Victoria Beckham, which we will, but I just want to tell you I did once photograph Lucian Freud, the great portrait painter. And it's listening to you photographing Al Pacino it's like we have we were separated at birth, you and me. I mean, I had such a similar experience. I went to photograph him at his studio in sort of Kensington, Notting Hill, and I was efficient, and I arrived early, but I didn't want to. I don't really like it when people turn up early. So I just sat on the doorstep, waiting for the quarter of an hour, whatever, and I sort of felt a rather cold sort of rush of air behind me, and the door had opened, and there was Lucian Freud staring down at me like, "You vagrant on my doorstep, who are you?" And I said, "I'm here to take your photograph." And he's like, "Oh, you're on time." And we went in, and guess where we photographed? In the garden. But I'd like to one-up you by saying I didn't take any lights. But I had lots of reflectors and everything. And we did the photograph within probably 20 minutes, which was really quick for me. But I had already decided what I wanted to do, and I had been warned that it was to be a short shoot. But I didn't actually leave that studio for about 3.5 hours because he was such a fascinating man.
Yeah.
And I became a complete fan of his just because I so enjoyed the banter and the love. Anyway, we did then do a second photograph because I knew that the one that I'd been commissioned to do was in the can, and we were getting on so well. And I said, "Can I do one more over here?" And he's
not to put too fine a point on it, but I've never met him, never did meet him. I thought he was meant to be a bit of a bastard. No?
Well, I know, but I do find that sometimes with the celebrity people, they're not who you think they are.
Yeah.
He was tough. I mean, those eyes were so piercing.
Yeah.
But no, we got on really well. I was slightly hoping he'd say, get your kit off and lie on there, and I'm going to paint you. Then I'd have a painting to represent our photo shoot.
Let me pick up on two things there, because you're absolutely right about the lights. And I think that the trick is not to be seduced by the latest, because these lights were new at the time and nobody was really using them. Not to be seduced by the new technology and stuff. You just need to take a good picture. Yeah. And that's not about technology.
No, there was a program many years ago about Lord Snowden as a photographer. And it was fascinating to me. I was quite young. I certainly wasn't a photographer in those days. I was inside, but I wasn't a professional photographer. And he pointed out that the photograph is in the photographer's eye. And he, to illustrate the point, he did pick a beautiful location, and it was in Venice. But he got an old biscuit tin, square tin, and in the darkroom he put a sheet of photographic paper taped onto the base of the tin. Then he put the lid on, sealed it with tape, punched a hole in it with a screwdriver, and then put some tape over it. And then he took this biscuit tin with him to Venice, and he put it on sort of side of the road, side of the canal. And he positioned it, and then he lifted the tape for 7 seconds, I think it was, and then he went back and he developed this sheet of paper that then looked like a negative because it was in reverse. And then in the darkroom, he put his negative print over another blank bit of photographic paper and exposed it for quite a long time and produced this fantastic photograph. And as I say, it was beautiful because of the scene, but it was to illustrate the point that it's not really the tools you use. Yeah. He used a biscuit tin and a screwdriver.
I want to flatter you and challenge you at the same time.
Go for the flatter.
Because I love your photograph, but I'm not so keen on Lord Snowden's. Are you going to disagree with that? Because that's the kind of controversially annoying person you're turning out to be.
I went to we're going off script here.
Yeah.
But I've got a really good Snowden story to tell you. I really wanted to be his assistant because I loved that he just took portraits of people. And there was a book that had recently been published just called Snowden, and on the front cover it was a picture of his studio with a chair in it and no one in it. And I wrote him a letter. I happened to know where he lived, and I hand-delivered the letter. He really kindly rang up and said, come round and let's talk. And I sat down in his office, and he said, now I want to ask you one or two questions. And the phone rang, and he said, listen, I'm sorry, I'm just going to... And he picked up the phone. And while he was talking on the telephone, I was like, oh, this is amazing. It was like feast for the eyes. And I was just sucking in every single thing around me. And I was like, I'm here. This is amazing. I didn't think he knew how long he spoke to on the telephone, because when he put it down, he said, right, there's one thing, and you're not to cheat, but this is how I can tell if you have a photographer's eye, because a photographer has to notice everything. So please cover your eyes and don't cheat. And so I did what he said. And he said, okay, what is in front of you? And I said, there's a chest with a cloth on it. And he said, what's on the cloth? I said, I don't know. He said, what's to your left? And I told him about the notice board. I told him what was on his desk. I told him the design of the tiles on the floor. I told him the length of the corridor to his studio where I could see the chair. I told him everything. I told him what shoes he was wearing. The entire time he was saying, are you cheating? And I said, no, I promise you. He said, what's in front of you? on that chest, and anyway, in the end, he said, "Okay, open your eyes." And I opened my eyes. I had got everything in the room right, except for I could not remember that on the chest in front of me were some of his most famous photographs in the films.
But we'll come back to that, because there's so many things you've said there that I want to go back to.
He didn't give me a job, by the way.
But but that whole notion that you need to be able to remember the detail. I once photographed Lord Rogers, the architect.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law is a massive fan of Richard Rogers. And so I get back like half an hour after the shoot, and she's going, "What was he wearing? What was the house like?" And I go, "I can't tell you what he was wearing." I've just stared at him, photographing him for hours. But there's so much other stuff. Lichfield is the one I love, Lord Lichfield, and we should come back to that. And when he died, I was very sad. But Lord Snowden doesn't quite capture the emotion and the humanity.
It's very interesting, because the photographer I was assistant to the longest, Julian Calder, said that apart from everything else that we have to learn to be able to be masters of our trade, something that you either have or you don't have is a sense of humour in your photographs. And I think maybe you're touching on that, because there isn't an enormous amount of wit or humour in Snowden portraits, but they are very beautiful and they are very well executed. And there's often a beautiful line or a great shape or a lovely composition, but maybe the sense of humour.
When I went round the history of royal photography at the palace.
I was in...
I know you are. I'll get to that.
I just blow my own trumpet for a second.
The ones that really moved me were indeed Testino's and yours, because there is a connection, there's life, there's emotion in them, which I just didn't think was... But anyway, can you tell Hugo, can you tell me a little bit about... Because I've never shot her. I'm interested to know how the shoot with Victoria Beckham came about and how that was, how you approached it. What can we learn from that?
It was one of those rare opportunities where I just I was very proactive. We have, as photographers, we have purple patches where it's almost like we can't go wrong, and we do have the other patches where, geez, I wish something would go right. Anyway, I think I must have been in a purple patch of creativity. It was just fantastic. And I'd actually just been asked to go and photograph the opening party of a restaurant called Hush, which doesn't exist now, but it was a great restaurant. And they had various celebrities coming. And I don't know where the idea came from within me, but it was my idea. I'm gonna claim the idea.
Own it.
But I decided to set up a single light in one of the back rooms, single light on a tripod and a Hasselblad on a tripod. And I was going to ask some of the celebrities if they would just come back and be photographed, where they were going to go shh and put their finger in front of their mouth saying hush. And we might use these later on. Now, it was long enough ago that not many people resisted to the idea. In fact, they quite liked the idea. Although Joan Collins absolutely said, "No way, what you can do with these photographs, I'm not giving you free publicity," blah, 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 or whatever she said. But she was savvy and on it and said no. But Roger Moore said yes, Victoria Beckham said yes, Oswald Boateng said yes, and a host of other people. Anyway, so I went up and asked Victoria if she'd come round, and she said yes. And I was immediately struck with how really charming and savvy and switched on she was. And the conversation we had was quite quick, but it wasn't just a surface conversation. And I admired her so much from that moment. Anyway, she came in front of my camera and we were chatting. I sort of didn't want to stop the talk because it was so interesting. She was talking about her career. This was so long ago. The career hadn't happened, but the way she had worked out shelf life of Spice Girls, this, that, and the other. And it was a fascinating... Anyway, and there she was leaning forward and she went shh like this. And I said, "The thing is, it looks like you're picking your nose." So she did it again and again. I think we took about half a roll of film. It was filmed. So 6 frames. And I knew I'd got it. And she was one of the people I wanted to hug afterwards because I felt that we'd made such a
connection
in such a short space of time. But part of that was the professionalism of her, knowing what she had to do for the camera and the generosity that she gave me in that moment. So I'm all thumbs up for Victoria Beckham.
So a couple of things I want to pick up on there, because I think that relationship between the photographer and the subject can be more than just a one. I can just click like that. But before I get to that, remind me to come back to that. Couple of quick things.
Yeah.
Joan Collins.
Yeah.
Much nicer to me than you, just saying. But your other guy, Julian Calder.
Yeah.
I think it's the same guy. He did an auction for some charity and he got me, this is the worst picture I've ever produced for anyone. And I think it was for him and it was for...
I don't have any of those, by the way.
Yes. No, Prince Charles, Prince William and Prince Harry, all photographed separately, but sort of somehow brought together for this auction thing with a painter. So the painter was working with my prints on a canvas. What a mess. And it gets worse. So Alistair Campbell, is who I know of old, is sitting there next to me and goes, has anyone bid for it? And I go, no, but it's rubbish. And he goes, should I bid? I go, no, it's rubbish. And he goes, £1,000. I go, oh, Alistair, stop it. And he just bids it up and he bids it up. And he takes home, and it's big, this picture. And he takes it home and he calls me the next day and goes, my wife won't have this picture on her wall. What can I do with it? And he managed to fob it off on some other charity. I had that same experience you had with Victoria Beckham, with Elon Musk's wife, who you may or may not remember. He's been married to Tallulah Riley, the actress, twice. I met Tallulah in LA for this shoot. And it was like you found a muse. She was just brilliant. She just worked with the camera. She knew what to do. And honestly, we just shot and shot and shot. And bizarrely, Elon Musk came to pick her up. This was years ago. Elon Musk came to pick her up. And he came in a very early prototype Tesla car, which he said, you must come and drive in this thing. And I said, why? He said, it's electric. It's the future. Anyway, he did spin me around the block in this thing, which was not interesting. Nor was he. But his wife, incredible. I mean, she just became one of my favourite subjects. And I think it's a weird moment when you just connect. You almost don't have... Some of our job, I think you'll agree, is warming people up, getting them relaxed, working with them. Or sometimes it just works.
Yeah.
And there's no work, there's no effort required. I'll ask you this, and I think I know the answer because I'm sure... What is the question journalists most often... If you had to kind of typify a question that you get most often by journalists, what would you say that was? I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's who did you least... They think they've stuck on some amazing new angle when they go, who did you least like shooting?
It is so interesting that. Now, do you want to talk about it or shall I talk about it or should we take it?
Well, let me set you up with this because I think it's an odd question because it fundamentally misunderstands the nature of what we do. I mean, what we do is we go to somebody for a couple of hours and we produce the best version of them possible. And in that 2 hours, it's very unlikely they're going to piss us off or show us their worst side.
I find the most difficult people to photograph are those that are closest to me, which is such a shame because I want to capture them. But they know me so well that I can't seduce them.
You can't trick them.
I can't do anything. And even though I find the people closest to me the most tricky. So you see, it doesn't really answer the question, but it's an interesting aspect of the whole process of portrait photography. But because why can't I? I can.
I don't think you can because we don't tend to encounter people, even Lucian Freud, other people will come away from Lucian Freud and go, wow, what a bastard. But you don't. You come away going, well, that was...
Why didn't he ask to paint me?
Yeah. And I think often it's to do with whether we've actually got a good portrait out of it as well, isn't it? The ones I found particularly difficult were Kevin Spacey, who upset me in a long list of ways. And at the end of it all, having declined to use my... I'm just going to vent.
Did you take the photograph?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, it was for Prince Charles then, now King Charles. And so, it's not, you think it's not for me, Kevin, it's for the king, for the prince. Like, pay attention. We're doing something here. And it's like the list of things he didn't do include not using my makeup artist that I'd brought and paid for. But that in itself, I don't mind. But I do mind if you're then going to say to me at the end of it, could we retouch the image? I mind you coming in very late and then deciding halfway through the shoot that it's over without any discussion with me as to whether I've got the picture.
Lack of collaboration.
Yeah, I could go on, but I'm not going to. The other one that I think is slightly interesting, and I wonder whether you've ever encountered this, was Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits, who I shot and was finding it very hard on my part. You know how you have to give energy and, you know, a certain amount of charm and effort to get the best out of somebody. And I was trying and I really wasn't getting anything. And to the point where towards the end of the shoot, I went and found his agent or / manager at the back and said, have I said something to annoy Mark? What have I done? I'm feeling a bit bad. And he turned to me and he went, oh my God, Mark is loving this. This is Mark on a great day. And I think one just has to, in a sense, understand that different people's levels of openness and energy and engagement are different. Thanks very much for listening. That's the end of this week's episode. Please do follow us, like us, leave us reviews, and you'll find us as Hugo and Jones on Instagram.
That's correct. So, bye-bye from me, double
Hugo.
exposure.
And it's goodbye from me.
Darling, work it. No, too much. Just give me some, that's all I want is attitude.